Hey everyone, I'm Heather, and if you're a fan of the Scared to Death podcast like me, then you may be wondering, are you a creeper or are you a peeper? Let's find out. Before we dive in, let's talk a little bit about Scared to Death. Scared to Death is a podcast by Dan and Lindsay Cummins. Dan is a well-known comedian from my home state of Idaho. The podcast has 150,000 followers on YouTube and tens of thousands on other platforms. If you're not familiar with this podcast, I highly recommend that you check it out. What is a creeper? Well, here we are not talking about that guy who is staring at you via the mirror at the gym, nor are we talking about the guy who used to hand us candy out of the white van when we were kids. When Dan, Lindsay, or their fans talk about creepers in the context of Scared to Death, hail Nimrod, we are talking about fans who prefer to listen to the podcast and let their imaginations fill in the details. A peeper, on the other hand, as you may have guessed, is a person who prefers to watch the horror stories unfold on the screen, complete with jump scares, gruesome scenes of violence, and are not hiding in the bushes. Well, I guess they could be, but I don't suggest going to find out on your own, because the last thing we want is your story showing up on the next episode. When preparing for this video, I was curious how many creepers versus peepers we had in our Creepers and Peepers Facebook group, so I asked, and boy did we get some good responses, like this one from a top contributor that states, "I'd say peeper. Peepers still get that pure fear element but keep coming back. Over time, I'd say creepers get desensitized to the horror elements so things become mundane." Another states, "Creeper. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for everything. Why do you think peepers have all the scariest stories? Creepers can go through some of the scariest stuff, and just because they are in a good mood, they don't even register the spooks." After a few hours, my non-specific and probably biased survey had quite a few more creepers in the comments than peepers. In fact, out of all the comments, about 70% of people identified as creepers. So where do you line up? You could ask yourself a few questions to find out. Do I prefer to use my imagination? Does watching a show help me connect better with the characters? Do I prefer to focus intently on a story, or am I multitasking? Do I pick up more details while listening than when I am being jump scared or distracted by needless gore on screen? You can probably guess by that last question that I am for sure a creeper. I like being able to listen while I am driving, taking a bath, or just doing things around the house. I feel that when listening, my imagination captures each detail without distraction and paints the scene in vivid detail. And for any of you who are the other kind of creeper, or peeper for that matter, my husband is retired Army and very protective. So in conclusion, when you're a fan of Scared to Death, I'm not sure it really matters where you align. I love this inclusive community of creepers and peepers, and look forward to listening to the next story with you, regardless of if you're only listening or watching.